On this episode of a Soul's Quest podcast, Omar and I are discussing the importance of understanding social awareness as it applies to our quest. Stay tuned.
So I've been thinking about this, right? And the first season of this episode, we talked about life as a quest. Yeah. You know, and why we should look at life as a quest. Mm-hmm. And then we started building, I think this season is about building things in order for people to truly understand what it takes to live life as a quest, you know. So we started with that. Then we talked about self-awareness and self-regulation and the components of what that takes.
Right.
The previous episode, we spoke about the polar opposites, or the opposite of natures, the duality that we experience both outside in our environment, but also within ourselves, and how understanding that could help us transition in our quest and learn more as we go. So we talked about those things. Well, in today's episode, one of the topics that we want to talk about, and you really want to bring this up, it is social awareness, right? And what is social awareness as it relates to our quest? What is that?
So social awareness is a component of emotional intelligence. And it's basically, it encompasses the ideas of compassion, empathy, and relationship skills, right? And so my theory, and it's not I take that back. That's not my theory, but Daniel Goleman's theory is that you can't be successful in life. And I know I use that example of, you know, the IQ gets you in the door or gets you into the game, but emotional intelligence keeps you in it.
Yeah.
And so you sort of need both. So when we're talking about dualities, and when we're talking about that before, when I think about that, because you need both in order to be successful in life. But I would argue, and I think a lot of people would argue, that emotional intelligence, social, awareness is critical to relationships.
Why is that component so critical? Why would you say that is so important to understand that? So
we talked about on our last episode about how we compartmentalize and we put people into groups, categories, and we categorize people.
That's
right?
based on our scientific method of thinking about the world.
Correct, the Newtonian, and so for me, and the thought behind emotional or social awareness is that in order for us to have a higher level of awareness, social awareness, you have to be able to recognize things, right? And people are a part of that component. You have to understand that people are different. So the idea behind social awareness is understanding different cultures and different and diversity, and understanding that although we are different in the way that we appear and the way that we look, that we have a lot of things that are there are a lot of things that are there's a lot of likeness here.
So, and one of the things that also you could drive deeper into is the fact that because we have different multiple personality traits below that culture specification, there's still a lot more to us, and social awareness at least gives us that spectrum to be able to look at a wider version of the individual. Is that something that what you're referring to?
Definitely, yeah. Because I think a lot of the issues that we have in society today is that because we are so separate and we see each other as so different, that we think that there's like this stigma of, oh, well, I can't be in this group, or I can't relate to this group. We talked about this in a couple of episodes ago about how, you know, you stand up for something. If you believe in you're against abortion, for example, those people are really, really like whatever, but there's also another side to this. And if you're not seeing that side of it, that's an endangerment to the individual because you don't know anything about that person.
Yeah.
So how can you stand so strongly for something, but not understand the other perspectives that are involved in that?
And that's a broad topic too, because
it's controversial.
It's controversial and it's broad, but it's also an individual that ultimately needs to make a decision, and those situations vary from person to person. So it's really hard, and no wonder they're so problematic, because they stem from particular religious beliefs or ideologies versus individuality.
Right.
So those things are always going to be so how do we overcome that, and how is social awareness going to help us overcome that?
Well, for one, I think the individual, or what we need to recognize, is that having relationships is what keeps you successful in life. It's a critical component, because you have relationships with people. You have, it's not just relationships with like just common, people, but in marriages, in at work, with your coworkers, with your parents, with your children. There's relationships, right, that you have to be able to understand, and it's the ability to have that perspective taking disposition, and understand that we are not the same. We think differently. We behave differently. We believe in different things. We don't like to eat the same things. It's very, very practical. It's not anything deep.
Yep.
And in order to be able to get along and find commonality with people, you don't have to like the same things. You just have to be okay with accepting that that's what they are, and be aware that there's these differences between people and individuals.
Yeah.
Right? Because I think when you understand that, you're able to then use the skills of compassion and empathy, because you're applying those things. You're exercising that as if I go to another country, they speak a completely different language. They eat different food. The way that they sit on the floor, they eat with their hands and whatever. In our country, we might look at that as like, that's disgusting. You're eating with your hands. Like, what? Don't serve me with those dirty hands, But if you can look past that and appreciate the culture and the people and the way in which they eat, and the way that they come together, then you have a different perspective, and you can exercise those elements of, like I said, compassion and empathy, and appreciate those differences in people. And that's important, because we were talking about duality and understanding the differences even within ourselves. And when you understand those things and you can bring them together and merge those differences, you get along in your quest easier. You're able to live a more peaceful life. Yeah. Right? To put it simply.
So let me ask you this, because I always try to think the opposite way about there's always a person that says, this is full of shit. There's, I believe in who I am, and whoever thinks differently is just stupid. I mean, you see that in the news all the time now. Just how easy people are called stupid or racist or this and that and the other.
They label
like right away. I mean, so what would you say to someone like that? And how do you manage someone like that when you come across that? And how do you move forward in your life if somebody is like that doesn't really care except about their own personal objectives and points of view?
Well, so there's a word for that, but I'm not a psychologist, just for clarity. And that's called narcissism. And I think that when we talked about this in our last episode when we talked about dualities and in merging these opposites, is that if you suppress these things that are within you, then you suppress your growth. You stunt that ability to grow in this really beautiful way that we are capable as humans of doing, right? So how do you make an individual like that? I don't know if you can make an individual. I don't have an answer for that. Nope. It's funny because I think I touched on this on our last episode when we talked about duality, that I'm writing about, toxic cultures, organizations, leadership, and the leader-follower dynamic and whatnot. I don't have an answer for how to eliminate a toxic culture. I don't have the answer for how to transform an individual who has toxic tendencies. We all have toxic tendencies. I don't have the answers to that. I only have suggestions. But you can only apply those suggestions or those the methods that I'm talking about in my book if you're open to that and you realize that, there might be maybe I should look into this a little bit. Yeah. But if you're and I don't want to use the word narcissistic, but if you're in that level where you think that you don't apply, you're here where the rest of us are down here and you don't apply, you're not going to understand that. You don't feel like you need to build relationships with people. How many people have we come across even recently that don't care about how they treat other people? They have no compassion, no empathy skills, no relationship skills, none. They're completely unemotionally intelligent because they don't know how to exercise these very simple skills, strategies to build relationships, to better themselves, to better that person, and to better the organization, the mission, the goal, whatever it is that you're trying to accomplish. Okay. So I don't, to answer your question, I don't have an answer to the question. I just think that the individual, if you're listening to your intuition and you're feeling like, man, I just left that conversation, it wasn't so good, maybe I could have done this different, and you're questioning, that's it right there. You need to listen to that.
So then to recap, right, social awareness is about understanding ourselves in relation to other people, right, and also understanding that not everyone is going to be aware of how they interact with others, correct?
We aren't aware the way that we a lot of times we just do things and we say things and we're not aware of how we treat other people
and how it affect other people
and we talked about this in past episodes too. So a lot of, because our episodes are linking together, that when you don't know that, it's like a butterfly effect. We have power that we exercise over other people, and that's critical because you can either destroy an individual or you could build them up. It's a decision.
Yeah. So then that leads us into what the problem of it all is. The problem of it all goes back to what we talked about in the previous episode about how we look at the world, right? In terms of separate and interconnectedness. So, I mean, I know that there's people out there that don't think that what they do matters, that it's all really about themselves, and we've seen throughout history cultures thinking that way to the detriment and the destruction of others,
and community societies,
even civilizations, I mean, World War II was about a group thinking that they're better than another.
Exactly.
And millions of people have died consequently because
at the hands of that thinking.
At the hands of that thinking. And there's still a prevailing thought of that as very people that think of themselves superior, does separate from others.
Exactly.
And that their actions, it primarily be just taking.
That's it right there.
Right? Taking of what's in it for me, rather than at the expense of everybody else. So there's always been that mentality. So that's the problem. That's really what the problem is.
That is
from my point of view.
In my point of view, I do. I think that there was a situation that happened. It happened a while ago now, and we had an argument, and I think I said something unkind to you because I like to use us an example because I think us is an example for other people. They think, oh, these people live it. This is
Yeah.
But I remember we had this argument and we had a disagreement and you came over to the table and because we were with other people or we were with the kids or something, I don't remember. And you came over and you were in my ear and you said, a little bit of kindness goes a long way. And it hurt me because I was like, damn, he's not wrong. I don't want to be unkind. You know what I mean? And now for me, in my growth, in my quest is getting to that place where I'm trying to be more aware of my actions and behaviors because I understand that I have a lot of power to hurt other people. I hurt you that day.
Yeah.
And you were telling me a little bit of kindness goes a long way. You probably don't even remember this, but I remember it and it stuck with me because I was like, I don't want to be unkind to people. I can be. There are my coworkers, absolutely. I'm sure they have seen an ugly side of me and I have had to apologize for that because I recognize it. But there are people who don't. So that's the difference. I want to have relationships with people that are meaningful and that people can walk away and say, oh, wow, that, that's cool. She at least recognizes that she was a bitch. Yeah. But there are people who don't think so. And that's where that separateness comes in.
Yeah. And I mean, and again, we want to focus on individuals, right? And that's the main focus. And we could look at social issues on a grand scheme. But the reality is that in that grand scheme, individuals are the ones making choices.
Of course.
And
at the end of the day, it's the individual's responsibility.
And we as individuals need to understand our relationship within ourselves as individuals, but also with the collective and the damage that it has. And the collective is not just other people, but also our environment and this community and the things that we're in, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. So moving on, the next part of what I want to get into, and I think we somewhat began to touch upon it, is why is it important to develop social awareness, and how is it relevant to our quest? So we talked a little bit about it, but from your perspective, from your point of view, why is it important for people to develop it? What are the benefits of it?
The benefits of it is very simple. It's that, first of all, I can't imagine, and I know that there are people out there that are like this, that probably think this way, and I'm not pointing anybody out, but there are some people who really think that I don't need to be nice to people. The world is full of hate and anger and frustration and whatever.
Yeah.
And we can look at the world as that, like, what's the world coming to? I hear that a lot.
Yeah.
What's the world coming to?
Yeah.
And, the world is such an ugly place and this and that. But, you pour gasoline or fire starter, whatever, fuel on the fire, then that's what you're going to get. You're going to get a fire. Then it turns into a fire. It turns into like you're burning down buildings. So doom and gloom breeds more doom and gloom.
Yeah.
Right. So again, it goes back to the being kind, right? And understanding our place in the world and our effect in the world.
Yeah.
Because when we look at it, at the end of the day, we're nothing in this world.
But we're everything at the same time.
But we're everything. Yeah. Exactly. We're nothing, but we're everything, because we have so much power that we exercise over other people. And we do it all the time. People get on top. People make it to the top on the backs of other people and fail to recognize that I would have never gotten there had it not been for all these other people. You know what I mean? And that happens frequently. We've experienced that personally, right? But having social awareness skills and having the skills of, because there's the skills of like kindness and like I said, empathy, respect, and seeing that person as a reflection of yourself.
Yeah, it's ironic that you mentioned that, because again, I'm looking at our notes, and it says here that social awareness is a component of Goleman's idea of EI, emotional intelligence, right? But it also includes the components of respect, kindness, compassion, active listening, and collaboration as it applies to resolving issues with others, right?
And that includes, I think I put in the notes, your disposition, how you because it doesn't have to be that you're saying anything, because there's elements of active listening, right? Correct, the components. It's how you are with them, the look on your face, your disposition, how you respond to that person, just even your.
So here's my thing, right? Where did we go wrong? Because for the tenets of Christianity, any major religion, this is the basic tenet of it, right? Love thy neighbor as you would thyself, right? Agape. That is the essence of any religious doctrine. Where did we go wrong? Why is it that this is not something that is more are part of our so-called Christian nation or Western philosophy? Because this is obviously a more productive way of and a holistic way to do that.
It's a more organic way.
More organic way to looking at the world. Now, some people, again, this is kind of like the criticism wide. I mean, again, this is where the opposites come in, because you got the social Darwinians on one side saying it's survival of the fittest.
And I was just going to say, greed, capitalism, the corporate world. It's about, if you think about it, what happened is, I don't know how to put it in a really good analogy, because I don't want to have a bunch of people saying, oh, these people are, they don't.
We're socialist.
We're socialist. We're socialist. We're not. That we're socialist, and that we are condemning religious doctrines and whatnot.
Not at all.
Because the premise of that all religions is to be kind to other people, do unto others as you would have done to yourself, right?
Yeah.
And treat others the way that you want to be treated is like fundamental. Like when I'm driving down the street, I accidentally cut you off or I didn't see you and I get the bird or I get whatever, right? People are cursing you out and I'm just like, dude, I wasn't trying. I wasn't on purpose, but people are really adamant that it was on purpose. And then what happens is they make themselves angry. They're frustrated and then they go and they take it out on other people. This is the power part that we're talking about, the butterfly effect. It just goes on and on and on.
Yeah. Yeah.
I think where we went wrong, so I'm not off on a tangent, is that we entered into this domain of making money, entitlement, titles, the corporate world.
But you know what? I had a conversation with a friend about one of the topics that we did about materialism, and I don't see anything wrong with capitalism. You know, it's a system in which it allows people the opportunities to compete in an open market.
It's when the greed comes in that it's a problem.
But the form of capitalism that we are experiencing doesn't allow for fair competition, doesn't allow for these different things, because certain people have corner the market,
and that's where it breeds anger,
and that's when it breeds the separation. But capitalism in and of itself,
no, it's not a bad thing.
It's an opportunity for people to. It has risen a lot of people out of poverty, which is the case, which is completely true.
Right.
It has given people a lot of opportunities to be able to create new ideas and new stuff. But there is that aspect of it. Again, back to the duality aspect.
When you're not fair about the capitalism and you're taking it all for yourself, that's the greed component that I'm talking about.
When you're shutting people out because you want to maximize.
And then those people are fighting against the people that are shutting them out, and the people that are shutting them out are fighting against the people that are trying to get in. And we're all just like, hey, we're just a squirrel trying to get a nut. We just want to we want a little bit of this too. Share. And that goes back to the basic principle of do unto others as you would do unto yourself. Yeah. Because when you exercise hatred and frustrations and angers and all the things that come with those emotions, then all you're doing is throwing fuel in the fire and building this hate, and separateness and you're not connected anymore. Yeah. You know what I mean? You're not seeing people for what they are, which is you're a human being.
There's something also that a lot of people talk about. I remember we went to Asheville during our break. And
remember, like it was so long ago.
Yeah. And I saw this girl on the floor. She had a little stand, and one of the signs that he said, "Eat the rich." And I looked at it and I'm like, that's interesting. I want to kind of clarify that what we're talking about, it's not, I don't care that we're not all going to get the same outcome.
Right.
There are people that are much better at a lot of things than others are. That's not the objective about being socially aware. I want to make sure that we make that clear.
That's not the point.
It's realizing that even though you have achieved great things, which is fine, there's nothing wrong with material possessions. It's the fact that if you get there, you still have to love your neighbor as you would thyself.
That doesn't take you out of that.
It doesn't take you out of that, and it doesn't make you better,
right,
or other than a person that doesn't have those type of things.
Right. I think like you can't forget where you came from, right? And it's like even people who are born with a silver spoon in their mouth, for example, okay, they still experience hardships and difficulties. It may have been easier for you, but to have that compassion. To understand compassion, to understand that other people didn't have it as good as I did. So you know what can I do to make the world a better place? That's a social awareness, understanding that we're not the same, but we're related. We're still human beings. Yeah. We still have things in common. We're still people.
And you can continue to strive for what you're doing.
Of course.
But it shouldn't be at the expense
of other people.
And
I think that's what happens is that people want to get to a certain place in their life, but they want to do it on the backs of other people rather than bringing those people with them. They don't need, it doesn't mean they're going to get to where you're at or you're going to get to where that person has achieved or whatnot. There's differences there, but to just appreciate the journey and the kindness and the relationship building that went into getting to where each of you went, whether it's here or not. It's always going to be an imbalance.
Yeah.
But there's a balance when you have social awareness because you have that relationship.
In the humanity aspect.
Exactly.
Of it all.
That's what I'm talking about.
Yeah.
Yes.
So going back to the original question as to why is it important to develop it? So then, in essence, what you're saying is that the reason why it's important to develop emotional intelligence, it's not to diminish our efforts to strive and become more self-aware or strive for material wealth. It's not about that. It's about not being able, understanding that's okay, but also not looking down upon others or using as people as pawns to get exactly what you want and take that aspect.
Yeah. I think about that all the time. I mean, it's a common knowledge that I'm getting a doctorate. I'm in my dissertation right now, graduating this year. And I'm proud of myself.
Yeah.
I worked my ass off to get to where I'm at today.
Mm-hmm.
But there is nothing inside of me that compels me to believe that just because I'm getting a doctorate, I'm smarter than, a custodian or a person that works at Walmart. Or I'm just saying that as an example. I feel personally that I've attained this level of education in the field of leadership only. And yeah, that encompasses a lot of things, but I'm in no way, shape, or form a perfect leader. And I can learn something from the person at Walmart who is getting treated like shit by a customer. And here I am thinking, tell him to F off and do this. And, I wouldn't even deal with that's not good leadership skills.
Yeah.
But I'm looking at this person and they're graceful and they're kind. And there's a lot to learn from that. You know what I mean? It's that humanity, that essence of humanity.
It's that observation and deduction
that's exactly what it is. Yeah. And to appreciate that instead of taking it from, you should have told them off. You didn't deserve that. And you know what I mean?
Yeah.
We had a situation like that when we went to the farmer's market a couple of weeks ago where this guy was in the line and it was uncomfortable. And I was feeling, this guy is just really upset about something ridiculous, the price of something. She charged him less.
Benefit. It was in his benefit.
She charged him less money than it was priced at, and he was making a stink out of it. And it was really upsetting. I was like, oh my God, he's making this poor girl feel like this. And we were really feeling bad for the customers. That is a level of observation that the customers, not just us, we were seeing that. It was uncomfortable. And it was like, that guy had so little emotional intelligence in that moment or social awareness to just say, oh, I paid, this was $6.99 and I paid $3.99. This is great. Bye. See ya.
Yeah, I actually had to step in. I had to be like,
you did.
Come on, man. Really?
That's not what you said. You're not listening. But okay, that's not at all what you said.
I said you're making a spectacle of yourself. You are actually getting more money than what you're saying. And really? I'm like, yes, you're not listening.
Yeah. And that right there, in that moment, he could have made that choice.
Yeah.
He messed up the days of two people that we saw. The one felt better because...
Just because he failed to listen.
Exactly.
Of what they were saying.
Exactly.
Yeah.
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 Yeah. I'm trying to be succinct.
No. I like what you're getting into.
I'm just saying, I think it's important. I'm not saying I'm perfect.
No.
I want to make that clear.
Yeah.
I fail miserably often. And I have to check myself. When I write in my journal at night or I think about these things, I think about what could I have done differently? And that's how you build social awareness.
And one of the things that I want to kind of like talk about is, I made the example of the girl with the girl with Eat the Rich is we also, being social aware, it's also being able to recognize that riches are not, people that have wealth are not necessarily inherently evil, nor did they acquire that in an evil type of way. It's been able to have a better understanding of things. My issue with it's like I mentioned before, mentioned in the season last year, is individuals like in 2008 that had no regard for the economy and super bright individuals, but gamble with people's lives recklessly. Situations like that are not progress. As, let's say, for instance, people were giving Jeff Bezos a hard time saying, thank you, my employees, and thank you for everybody that bought Amazon because we were able to build a ship to go into space. I don't see that as something bad because he's doing something that is productive first and foremost because I like space exploration. I think it's something that we always have done, explore what's beyond our capability, and he's putting that money into that exploration. Same thing with Musk. Again, you could debate as to the validity of what people are doing, but those are two different contrasting examples. They're not gambling at the expense of the destruction of a complete economic system. They're venturing they're always doing what, number one, a lot of nations haven't been able to do, nor want to do, nor want to take the chance to do. And it's something that is in our nature to explore. So they're taking on that advantage. Now, again, compare that to 2008, in which, you got a whole bunch of wild cowboys just gambling with people's lives. It's two different points of view. So to demonize wealth and stuff, it's not the right thing to do. It's not what we're trying to accomplish. That's not what we're trying to say. No, we're trying to demonize.
I think it's great when people are progressive and they're making money, but not when it's at the expense of other people.
Not at the expense of
others.
Not
when you're looking at other people as less than humans, which is what we all are. At the end of the day, we're all human, and we all feel to some degree,
and also at the expense of our environment, and those are the things that we have to kind of keep into consideration, that we have to be careful as to how we villainize people, but also call people to task when situations don't seem right, and that's that's the duality,
and that's the hard part too.
That's the gas
is to speak up for things that are like that too. That's a whole nother subject, but I think though, when you're aware of it, when you recognize those things, you can say, "Oh, okay, I'm becoming more socially aware." But it's not just being aware of it, but also what are you doing? What are you doing?
What is the individual doing?
Yeah, because you have to be able to exercise those skills, those components of social awareness.
Yeah,
and that is what's going to make you successful.
So this is a perfect segue. So moving on. How do we go about cultivating and developing social awareness?
So honestly, social awareness is something that is, so just speaking from an educated perspective, it's something that's taught to children. That's the best time to teach it. Because what you're teaching is those critical components of empathy, kindness, respect. So you teach that to children. Parents teach that to children. You learn that in school. Wait your turn, raise your hand, be respectful, be kind.
So that what you're saying, that this is almost like one of those cultural social conditions or social instructions that we learn.
Yeah.
When we are in a community, we're in a family.
Yes, definitely. So you learn how to be respectful. You learn how to say, being kind to other people and saying thank you and please and things like that. That's being kind to other people. Those are skills of social awareness, right? Because you're saying, this person gave me something. So what do? I thank the person for giving me this, respectfully. You're being respectful to this person. You disagree with somebody, but you do it in a respectful manner, right?
So then what you're saying with that is that these are not just simple formalities that we're doing. There's a reason why we should say thank you. There's a reason why we should say, open the door for someone and be polite, or there are important societal benefits,
of course,
to doing this.
Yeah, because it's a domino effect. When I look at it like the example of, I had a coworker of mine say that they went to Dunkin' Donuts and they go up, they order their food, then they go to the next, I guess you order at the thing and then you go to the next one and then you pay for your food. Yeah. And you pick it up there. And the customer says, or the cashier says, "Oh, the customer behind you paid for your meal or your coffee or your donut or whatever." How does that make you feel?
It feels good. Free donut.
So then what do? You're like, hell yeah, coffee and a donut. Yeah. I'm good. Or a sandwich, or just a coffee. For some people, just the coffee is great. Yeah. They go forward during the day. The social awareness comes in with, how are you paying that forward? Okay. And that's how I look at it.
That's how you look at it.
Because I was given something and it was kind. It was a kind act that didn't have to be done for me. So what can
With
I
no
do
expectation.
for some? None. Right. Because that customer is going to drive away and they're not going to get anything out of it. This guy's got to pay for your food and his own.
Yeah.
Right. So what are you going to do to pay it forward? What are you going to do to be kind and respectful and appreciative of another individual?
See, but I also see someone saying, you know, because I know there's a lot of people, there's a movement out there about kindness, be kind, and you know, there's a person out there saying,
Of course.
whatever. It's like, I don't have to be kind to anybody.
And that would go back to the narcissistic part that I'm not labeling. I am not a psychologist. That's why we needed Brian here. But those are individuals who have those narcissistic tendencies. How about that?
So the well-being and doing these little acts of kindness, the benefit of it all is that it ties our bonds in society much more, you know, in all aspects. So it could be just as simple as, you know, one of the big topics it's you know, police brutality and things like in traffic stops and people feeling uncomfortable. That situation being more kind.
And it goes both ways, because the police officer, the law enforcement officer, has no reason to be rude to somebody they pulled over if that person is not being belligerent or rude to them. But it happens
the other way too. It happens both ways.
It's a two-way street. So I'm not knocking law enforcement officers, because I work with law enforcement officers, so I respect that line of work deeply. But it's also, you have those police officers that are at this level that I think I really am above the law.
And
they really live that.
Yeah.
And they exercise that with people when they don't need to. We had that experience when we went on a vacation. Law enforcement officers yelling at me because I stepped off the curb when I shouldn't have and went off on me. And you were protecting me. Like, you don't need to treat people that way. That is a prime example right there. Like, that wasn't necessary.
I tell the guy off at the,
I know,
and tell, you know, people off. I need.
That's the bad boy side of you.
That's the South Bronx coming out sometimes.
South Bronx. Oh, that's hilarious. But I just think that just to answer the question about how you cultivate it and develop it, is just being able to be more you have to really be in alignment.
Okay.
I think that's a good way. That's the word that I use, is being in alignment. When I think I've talked about it in the past, how we have those wheels that come together, and if they don't,
the grind,
they don't move forward, you know? And then what happens is the rest of the machine breaks down. So if you look at that as the wheels, as we're the individuals here together, the wheels, and we're in alignment with each other by being aware.
I'm glad.
This is probably, let me just say this. This is probably super poetic for people. They're probably thinking these people are so, like, they're like in another world. They're in utopia, right? We're in utopia, because that's not a world that can exist. But I defy those people. I defy that, because I believe that is a world that can exist. And I think that the way that we can make that world happen, and again, this is probably a poetic way of thinking or a line of thinking, is by being aware of how we are. Like, and I'm not saying I'm perfect, but I can only use myself as an example because I'm speaking from my own perspective. I have had to check myself multiple times, you know what I mean? And apologize to people and really recognize, like, what could I have done differently to be a better person in that situation? And when we ask these questions of ourselves, if we actually humble ourselves enough to ask these questions, the world becomes a better place.
Yeah.
One person at a time.
And I think that I don't want people to misunderstand, I mean, and correct me if I'm wrong, that being kind, number one, has to come from a place that you want to do it. It's not something that is forced, that you feel like I have to do this, because then it's not genuine.
Right.
It doesn't come from here. Right. That's number one. And the second thing is, doesn't mean that you have to be a pushover.
I was going to say,
because
absolutely not.
recently I saw this this thing between Jordan Peterson and I forgot his name, Byron, a professor, Byron.
The dude with the glasses.
Yes, Dyson. I forgot I think it's his name.
No.
And then
you should put that in the link so people can look at it, because that's a prime example.
And what I saw is a debate, but he Dyson called Jordan Peterson, you're a cranky old man, he
was mean,
white privilege and things like that, and Jordan Peterson said, you don't know anything about me, and
he was
this and that and the
diplomatic.
And he was very diplomatic around in his responses, and I felt kind of disappointed in Dyson, because having the conversation like that from that point of view, where do we get an understanding? Where do we really begin to for a person to understand your point of view, and for them to and for you to understand their point of view and come to a middle ground?
Right.
Why would you call somebody out like that?
To respect each other's perspectives. You don't have to agree.
Yeah.
But he was just downright
just rude. Just disrespectful.
And ugly. And that is exactly what I'm talking about.
And I lost a lot of respect for him, because he's got a lot of valid points.
He's got a really good point.
He's got a lot of valid points. But when he did that, I'm like, wow. It's like...
That wasn't necessary. There was nothing in that interaction that called for that behavior. And that is exactly this. Again, I'm sorry. I didn't mean to cut you off in traffic. I didn't see you. It was an innocent mistake. I haven't had enough coffee, whatever. Nothing happened. It didn't destroy you, but you made it an issue by giving me the finger, cursing me out, slowing me, road rage. Some people die for these things.
Well, yeah.
So it's like, come on, man. I'm a little bit of grace.
But again, it goes back to what I mentioned before about the doctrine of religion, particularly Christianity, right? I'm a big. I let me rephrase that, because it's going to be a little tricky, right? I'm not a fan. I'm not a Christian anymore, right? I'm not. The institution of Christianity don't do it for me.
Okay. So you were, and you ain't no more.
I ain't no more.
You ain't no more.
The institutions of Christianity don't do it for me no more. But Christ does. I think the two are now completely two different things. Because what the Bible is and what the institutions are two completely different things. And
you might be getting some comments on this one.
It's fine.
That'd be great.
I don't mind talking to people about it.
I think it would be wonderful.
Yeah, because the institutions are no longer serving Christ's purposes. Kindness, respect, love thy neighbor as you would thyself.
Humanity.
I remember I had this scenario happen in which I had this lady visit my mother. Never met this lady before. Don't know her. And she just looks at me and she's like, do you go to church? And I'm like, no. And she's, do you have faith? And I'm like, I feel bad for my mother, because my mother is a church-going woman, and I'm like...
Oh, because you're saying...
And I'm like, and my mother understands my beliefs and, what I feel. And I'm like, lady, like, first and foremost...
And what did I say? This is a perfect example of how I am imperfect. I was like, you should have told her da-da-da.
Exactly. And I'm like, listen, I respect you. I respect what you believe. I respect what you do. I have my own ideas and my own way of looking at it. But I respect what you do. Do your thing.
But the thing is, that is a perfect example of social awareness. You didn't know you were exercising social awareness in that moment, but you were. Because you could have responded the way I was telling you to, which is terrible.
I could have just said, listen, first and foremost,
mind your business.
Mind your business, number one. Number two is you're wrong because you're judging around people that you don't even know anything about. Right. And you're walking around with this superior mentality without really wanting to get to know who the person is. And you just met me, lady.
Yeah, that's a perfect example of that. In and of itself encompasses this entire episode.
So then going back to the idea of that, it's like social awareness, just to kind of like recap, is that idea of understanding who you are in relationship to what's around you, and then being able to understand that your response, the way that you respond, will have an effect.
Correct.
And it could be a positive effect or a negative effect, or it could be an effect in which you stand your ground, and that's also okay. It's not just
respectfully.
You could stand your ground and assert your beliefs without having to be condescending, disparaging the other person, calling people stupid. You don't have to do any of that, and you can still be assertive of who you are as an individual.
And the person that you're being assertive towards, having social awareness, says, I understand that. I can appreciate your perspective. Yeah. Thank you for sharing, and have a nice day, whatever. You may never even want to speak to that. You don't have to. You don't have to like everybody. Yeah. You know what I mean? But just having that mutual...
And it's okay, because we talked about how people view the world in different ways, how the East and the West looked at the world differently, right?
Yes.
How over-categorization makes us look at the world different. You know, it's not about imposing my point of view of you. It's just a different point of view.
It's about appreciating the other point of view.
And again, I'm going to say something right now because I know some smart ass is thinking about this. Well, what about murderers and killers? But come on, that's a different thing. That's you're violating somebody else's rights.
That's a whole nother
that's
extreme.
Come on, it's like,
I don't think we're talking about that. Well, yeah, there are people that are going to say that, and they're going to say that, and that's fine. But obviously, that's not what we're talking about.
Exactly.
That's not. We're talking about kindness and respect and humanistic. Murder and rape and child abuse and things like that.
Taking away from others,
and doesn't fall in line with what we're talking about. What we're trying to talk about is having those elements of, or components of, being kind and understanding and understanding that people are different than you and respecting that difference.
So my final question, to kind of like bring this whole episode together, is what is the top 3 takes away? What are the top?
Just do it.
What is it that Steve Carell did on the Weatherman? Yeah, remember that? I don't remember that. Weatherman? No, it wasn't Weatherman. It was
I don't know.
It was God Almighty. Anyways, man, this head of mine. What are the top 3 takeaway lessons that we need to hold on to for now? What are the lessons that we need to take away from this episode, from your point of view?
From my point of view, the 3 lessons. Ooh, you put me on the spot. Definitely that we have, because we're amazing things. We're human, right? We have the ability to expand our knowledge, our growth, our capacities to think and take in information, right? Which means that we have potential, that we can grow, and that we can continue
evolve,
to self-actualize, right? Or not as... I don't want to say, we're doing that self-actualizing process, right? And that is a beautiful thing, because you're constantly evolving and recognizing new things and encountering these things is a beautiful process.
Yeah.
It's painful. I've gone through some things recently and I'm just like, I don't like this. I don't like this at all. It doesn't feel good. But it's expanded me as an individual. It's expanded my growth. It's expanded my perspectives. And it's made me think more of asserting myself, excuse me, but doing it in a way that is kind, and not demeaning of another individual. So that's one. Now I'm choking on something. You have water over there? You didn't bring water?
Where I put it.
Okay.
It's all the way over there.
Oh, okay.
So wine.
So
the
other thing that I would say is that ensuring what we just talked about in our last episode is understanding that we have different points of view, and that your world is different. Think about that. You and I, we're married for, how long have we been married? Holy crap. A long
16
time.
years.
16 years this year? 17 years this year.
Oh.
Wow.
We've been together 21.
That's a long time. Which means we've been married for 17 years this year.
Okay, well.
And we've known each other all this time. And we are really different people in a lot of ways.
Yes.
Right?
Of course.
And we do everything together. Like, we love to spend our time together. We also love to spend our time apart, but we enjoy many of the same things, but we have different perspectives on the world.
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah.
we have different political perspectives. We have different perspectives on how philosophical aspects, you know,
how we talk to our kids. We have different perspectives when it comes to
very
that.
much so.
Yeah.
And I have had to develop that and understanding of that you're different in that.
And vice versa.
Right. And appreciate it and take the good components from that and say, okay, well, you know what? He means well. So when I'm talking to our kids about things that you do or say or whatever, and they're like, what was, I don't get it. It's easier for me to say, well, he's coming from a good place. And you have to understand that this is how Omar expresses himself, because he cares about you and he wants what's best for you. And so it's a little harsh, but he means well. You know what I mean? And I think that our kids, for the most part, understand that and they appreciate that. You know what I mean? I mean, I hear that from Jake. I hear that from Jordan. They say that, you know? So that's another aspect of, that I would take away from this episode. Okay. And then the other thing that I would say is just to understand that the third component would just to say, I'm stuttering now, because I'm trying to clear my throat, is that to understand how, as individuals on this planet, we have so much power to, and I've already said it, to either to make or break somebody.
Yeah.
And when you understand that you have that power, but then understand that you're so little, you're so finite on this planet, it makes you feel vulnerable. It makes me feel vulnerable. I always look at the poster that we have here in our studio about the Carl Sagan, like, you are, I wish we could put it here. You are here, and it's Earth, and it's like this little dot in this huge galaxy of galaxies of universes. And it's like, oh my God, we're nothing, but we're everything.
Yep.
And when we understand that, it changes your perspective on how you want to treat other people. You want to smile at people more often. Hey, how are you? Acknowledge people, you know, and I have trouble with that because I have resting bitch face. I can't even help it. I have this look on my face that just says, get away, out of my way, stay away from me. Yeah. But the minute somebody says something to me, I'm like, oh, hey, how are you? You know, it's just my face. But I'm cognizant of that. I'm not going to change it because I think that that's, again, allowing people, it's giving people an excuse not to talk to me.
Yeah, but again, it goes back to people's having an expectation because you look a certain way. That you are a certain way.
So I'm not going to change that about me. I can't. I'm not going to say how old I am, but I'm getting older and I'm not going to change for people at this point like that. Yeah. I'm going to change for me. And that's one thing that, you know, I think helps us to broaden that perspective taking, you know, when I think about it that way. So. Yeah.
No, this has actually been very insightful because it gives perspective to a lot of different things. You know, it's, I like the fact that you mentioned that we are all interconnected, you know, and, in the vastness or the grandeur of what we think we are temporarily, that's all there is. It's only temporary. It's not everlasting, you know. So
the one thing that when you say that makes me think of it, I remember because there was a point where I was going to church and I was every Sunday type of girl, whatever. I was raised Lutheran and whatever, so we had, you know, that Christian mentality in our home and whatnot. But one of the things that I remember hearing that always stuck with me, and I don't know if this is a belief that most Christians have or religions believe or anything, but that we are all, when you say that we're interconnected, or when I said it, that we're all an aspect of, or an element or a piece of God, right? So I don't go to church, and I would say that I can't necessarily, I'm a spiritual person, you know, and I believe in God and I believe in humanity and being good. And in fact, I can be poetic about that because I'm like, they should have did this. And it's like, you have to bring me down to that level of, well, you know, that's your expectation. But when you look at other people and you think, man, this person is an extension of God, it changes how you look at other people. Yeah. But that's what's missing, is that we don't look at other people as an extension of that element, of that something that is so, like, it blows your mind to even think about it, for me at least. Yeah. And that's my own thing, but I heard it from a guy that he was a priest, and he was teaching our class a bunch of, I think it was for communion or something, or I don't even remember, but he said that you need to treat other people with kindness and respect because they're an extension of God. I thought that was powerful.
Interesting. Well, thank you so much for this episode. Really appreciate it.
You're welcome. Thanks for having me. If you like this episode, make sure that you subscribe, like, share, and please leave us a comment or leave us some feedback. We want to hear back from you and have some dialogue with our audience and our listeners. If you want to know more about what we're doing, check us out at asoulsquest.com.